Welcome, everybody, to the Reelblack podcast, a special Juneteenth edition of the podcast. I didn't hit pause. Welcome to the podcast. Today, we have our my two esteemed co-hosts, Charles Woods. Say hello to the family.
Peace and blessings, everyone.
And Mr. Eric Payne.
What's up? What's up? What's happening?
We're just waiting for the room to fill up. So while we're waiting for the room to fill up, I got to see both of you live and in person this past weekend. I had a great time, working hard, but also having a great time. Eric, it was so good to see you in New York at the Tribeca Film Festival.
Yeah, that was cool. What was the name of the thing? The Right to Offend, talking about the little comedy thing. It was interesting documentary,
Yeah, Dr. Kristen Gregory invited us up to go to the premiere of the movie The Right to Offend, which is a new documentary that's going to be on A&E the 30th of June, I believe is the date, if I'm not mistaken. It's a two-part docuseries about the history of stand-up comedy as told through the Black lens. And it's got what I was most impressed about it.
Wait, can you back up? You said through the Black lens of what?
You think so? You disagree?
What did you just say? That little last line you said?
Through the Black lens, told the way the impact of stand-up comedy, the politicized view of stand-up comedy is told through Black comedy, I guess. I don't know. Am I saying it wrong?
Help me. The log line they put up for that? Because the filmmakers, one was half Black, half Latino, and the other one was Latino. So that's why I was saying through what lens.
Okay. Well, yeah. Well, that's a fact. I mean, that's something we have to address at some point when we go to review the film. It's a film about Black comedy, but it's told it's Latinx filmmakers. So
interesting. I mean, an observation is an observation, but if talking that raises a whole nother question of things, that means
authorship,
facts.
Eric,
yeah,
they Black, they just speak Spanish. That's all.
That's true. But I mean, which do you claim Black or what do you claim? I mean, apparently Enrico Tarrio doesn't claim Black clearly. So I just wonder some in the community, Latino community, they don't necessarily.
Yeah.
Well, you remember Queen Mother Moore? She used to say, "It's just where the boat dropped you."
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, but I thought it was really a strong piece, especially with the archival. They had a lot of clips I'd never seen before. And then a lot of the clips I had seen before, they put in exactly the right place where they needed to be, So we only saw the first half. The first half deals with the impact that Dick Gregory, Richard Pryor, Moms Mabley, and Flip Wilson had on stand-up comedy, and Godfrey Cambridge a lot up until 1980. It goes into
right. They dealt with that up until really Richard Pryor. And they kind of stopped during his era.
Right.
And I should assume, obviously, they'll pick up with Eddie and
Eddie, Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle.
Yeah, from that point on.
Yeah, and I was excited to see it, not only because our friend Kristen Gregory was a part of this series, Dick Gregory's son, but also Reelblack has some footage licensed to the documentary. So some footage of Chris Rock from the comic strip is in the movie. So check that out on A&E. It's called Right to Offend. I'll put that in the chat. And then Charles, we got to hang out. Oh, we spent too much time together. I started to dress like you.
I didn't get t-shirts.
We're talking about commercialization. I think we're part of it.
Well, we're supporting small.
And by the way, talking about Black lens, that's the way I'm seeing you guys right now, through the Black lens.
Through the Black lens. Lickety Black. Black world through a Black lens.
And I should mention that this Right to Offend documentary is executive produced by Kevin Hart, and he's in it. Chris Rock's in it. Cat Williams is in it. So despite the authorship, there's a lot of participation of Black folks. So Right to Offend, put that on your calendar, and we'll have some follow-up interviews to help promote the show as well. Donnie, you threw me off. You said T-shirts. I'm reading and writing at the same time. It's killing me. But then on Saturday, I'm getting confused. Sorry, Charles. Saturday we hung out. We premiered our new film, Slavery to Freedom. Do you want to speak on that before we jump in to the topic?
Well, I mean, these dark glasses, because I'm winding down now, and I'm so tired. We were pushing it, working hard to get it finished. It premiered at the Langston Hughes Library and Cultural Center. Christine Zay, who helped to get the program together and invited us. It turned out to be a very nice event, and there was so much going on. And juxtaposing some of the activities back to this discussion we're having now, one of the ladies had a T-shirt on, and it was one of the T-shirts you contributed to the staff. And then she got into a discussion. She says, we're having issues. Should the color B be part of the T-shirt? Because she was looking at my T-shirt, and then she brought up the issue of the color blue.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't know where she was coming from with that. But what it is, Eric and Mike, is that you know how we have certain colors represent Blackness.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? The red, yellow,
red,
and
black,
green.
green.
Red for the blood, green for the earth, black for the people, or for the soil.
Yeah. So what they were saying is they felt that blue was an appropriate color because it represented America.
Mm-hmm.
And now these slaves who found out that they were free, now they felt they could be really recognized as true Americans. And it just harkens back to something Baba Dick said, America is my mama. And then you go to something W.E.B. Du Bois talks about when he speaks on the issue of the double consciousness. One thing that is inescapable, as much as they want to send us back to Africa, we feel we belong here because we help make America what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so don't talk about sending us back. If you want to send some people back, then send everybody back and give it back to the people who were here when the Europeans came. But it's just interesting. So that whole conversation was engendered by the fact that one thing is clear. Charles Blow has an article in today's Times where he speaks about the dichotomy where this thing could be on one hand commercialized and commodified, and that could be a bad thing, but on the plus side it can be great because it can be an event or something that spurs our getting involved in knowing what this is all about and researching the history. And this has become a day more people know about than people knew about it in the previous year.
So let's get into the history of it. For those, because we did the Juneteenth mix today, and one of the comments was June what? Like a lot of people don't know it's a holiday today. So
today is the government recognized holiday is actually yesterday.
Yeah,
it was June 19th. So today was the government observation of it. For the commercialization of our holidays, as usual. So the convenience of having long weekends and things like that, that's a commercialization to a certain degree, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Mike had talked about the colors. I'm looking at someone's comment, Dakota, and it just fascinates me. I'm fascinated by the fascination. We are Americans, and I just looked that up, Mike. I didn't mean for you to put it there, but I'm fascinated by the fascination with the larger dominant population. I'm fascinated by white people's fascination with us. And when we had the discussion last week, we were talking about mental slavery. We had the kind of troll people popping in, and it's like you said, Charles, that people want to say go back to Africa, but then there's this fascination with us when we have conversations amongst ourselves, conversations that don't really have anything to do primarily with the more dominant population. We're talking about our own self-improvement, and here they are, in on the discussion. So I'm fascinated by you guys' fascination with us, and that's why they don't, go back to Africa. But you don't really want us to leave. And the history is incorrect when you suggest that, because there's proof that people have been traveling here to the Americas way before Christopher Columbus got lost here. So the individuals, it's America, right? America's Vespucci and those people. It's hard to discover a place that's already got a name. It's a discovery to you, but already had a name. So that told you that it must be somebody must have named it. So this ridiculous notion, so much ridiculous shit in this country that we live, that's been developed out of racism and white supremacy and the need for some people to feel better than other people and us to divide ourselves. So much crazy shit that we make up in our head to justify this lunacy.
Yeah,
but
well,
fascinating to me. I just
last week was super crazy because the topic was mental enslavement, but the trolls didn't seem to get the point. Now,
and that was just the flag, because we were talking about the flag. There should be blue in there, and I guess so and so thought we were talking about the American flag, so he said red, white,
well,
blue.
no, there is a legitimate discussion that the colors of Juneteenth, because it's Black people here are Americans. It should be represented by red, white, and blue as opposed to red, black, and green. I don't know if you have an opinion either way. I kind of like the red, black, and green, but it does segregate the holiday in a way.
Yeah, but it was the reason that we needed to have the holiday was because of the situation that we were put in the first place by a group that says we should. So, it's kind of, I understand it to a certain degree, and I understand the concept behind that. But America was the reason we were in a situation. And since it was the slave labor that built primarily the country, and we didn't know where we were coming from, and every other nation or immigrants that have come here either voluntarily or involuntarily can fly their flags from their country, but we didn't know ours. So why not? Why not as a representation of where we came from? Not in shame, not in chains, not in shackles. Why not? I'm not mad at that concept of the possibility of thinking of out of America was born, but it was out of the horrific behavior that America engaged in that caused the war to happen in the first place, that caused them to happen to not want to tell the slaves they were free in the first place. So, we always want to talk. We don't ever want to talk about the root of the problem a lot of the times in this country. And there's a root of a problem. So, let's get to really what it is. And like I said, that's a valid point of discussion, and maybe it should be there. I don't know, but it just seems to me when you think about the reason why we were in that situation, it was because of America, right? And I believe the Civil War after the Revolutionary War, was it not?
I'm going to paraphrase Stephen Biko. Something you just said, Eric, reminds me of something he said. The most powerful weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed.
Say it again. I'm sorry. I got caught up reading somebody's. They're powerful.
The most powerful weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed.
That's true.
You see, when they didn't want the slave to learn how to read. You see, the way you can control a man is you keep him ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
When Toussaint Louverture had led that revolution in France against Napoleon, and they were victorious the first time it ever happened, they didn't want that information to get back to the slaves in America. When you learn about Nat Turner and his ability to read, and he was reading the Bible, well, one of the things they did is they had an ordinance. They created a special Bible, called it the nigger Bible, the Negro Bible. Certain passages could not be read. One of them was Ephesians 6:5, where that's the one they wanted you to hear about the slave has to obey his master. See, but the other passages they didn't want you to hear. They didn't want you to hear when Moses was there to free his people from the bondage of the Egyptians. They didn't want you to hear that Jesus was saying all men are the same. We're all of the same blood. They didn't want that to be heard. So once again, the way you control the people, you keep them ignorant. That's something that was put in the Willie Lynch letter.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that made it very difficult to free the slaves was that it was very technical, where they separated slaves. Where you had the house niggers and the field niggers, you create a division.
Sure.
So with that division, you're able to maintain control, because you can't even have some blacks feel confident in what other blacks would know when you stage in a revolution. That's what happened to Gabriel Prosser. It happened partly to Nat Turner. Okay, it happened with many of the Jews who were betrayed. You know, the Diary of Anne Frank. Anne Frank's family was betrayed by Jews.
Mm-hmm.
You hear things about the Stockholm system.
Right.
Okay, so I told Mike I wanted to do a piece. We have a number of divisions, things that keep us at each other's throats. I'm looking at the commentaries from the so-called black conservatives, and there's always this issue when you have certain blacks protesting against police brutality. Then you got these black conservatives coming out and saying, well, where's all the uproar and anger over blacks killing blacks? Okay. Now, the thing about controversies, they come out of a kernel of truth. You know, all you need is a little nugget of truth, and then you can stretch it into a big lie.
Right.
That's what a conspiracy is.
Sure.
See, conspiracy is from you con means with, and you spire means breathe. You breathe with others who think the way you think, and you conspire to create some BS.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. You know, when you a couple of points there that I want to piggyback on. First was the ignorance, right? Keeping people ignorant. And as I'm talking to you guys, I got my my TV on the news channel, and you know that's kind of what I do most of the day. Like a lot of us watch the news 24 hours a day, and the hearings, and these people that storm the castle, a lot of them, the base of the extreme right, are kept ignorant to the facts. They're kept ignorant to the facts, and the people that they trust and rely on are not giving them the facts, right? And so even that aspect of how you control someone is having their mind in your hand and what they believe. In America, we know that America is expert at guiding the public of the whole bait and switch, 3-card Molly. It's this, it's that, it's right over here. You know, that's why Trump really, you know, excelled at this game, right? It's this, it's that, it's over here. You kind of, like you said, he takes a kernel of the truth. All the politicians come to see me for money. and then expands on that, right? Everybody knows that. I mean, the most basic stereotypes that people say all the time. It's the politicians, the people in DC, it's this, it's that. That's surface knowledge. This is, you guys heard me say this before, and I said this on my radio show, that people need to learn the statistics about their representatives like they know the statistics about their favorite athlete. People can know what their athlete did 25 years ago in game 1 of the playoffs of this and that, and know how many stats they had, how many points, rebounds, and all this stuff, but they don't know the votes that their representative that represents them and controls the taxes or the base of money comes in. They don't know what those people do. And then if you were to get into the discussion with some of these people, oh, that's politics, oh, it's too much, oh, my mind can't handle that. Well, Malcolm X said freedom is responsibility. And for people in my community, your mind needs to handle that. And there's ancestors that came before you, their minds handled a lot more than that. So in this march towards freedom, right, that has to be utmost in our minds. And people of my generation, and when I was a boy, thinking that racism would be resolved, by the time I got old, and the protests and the things that my parents, my father, my uncle were involved in, those things would be resolved. Well, they weren't. A. B, we were a little spoiled coming of age in the 80s because of all of those accomplishments that have been made. And so we were spoiled, I think. And we kind of got caught up into, being Americans, just living our lives, as opposed to when I think about the previous generation, Charles, my father's generation, they had to deal with the threat of racism and oppression every single day. That was foremost in our mind, as it is foremost in our mind, but not like theirs. Not like as soon as I go out the door, this shit is going to hit me in the face immediately. I'm going to have to get to the back of the bus. I'm going to have to think about how I address so-and-so. My father told me about an experience he had as a young man working at a ShopRite grocery store closer to his home. A white woman didn't want him serving her. So he got transferred to another shopping center, grocery store, way further. He had to take a train, a trolley, up here to where I live from Newark, where he was living at the time as a boy in the 40s. So that's what I'm talking about, right? A very existential in their face. In my generation, our generation came across, especially a kid like me who was born to upwardly mobile Black people, moved to the suburbs after the uprising in Newark, moved to a so-called progressive community in the suburbs. And so there was a little bit of a bubble that they created for us to not have to deal with that up-in-your-face racism. Mm-hmm. But I think in that sometimes your soldierism, the warrior in you, kind of has to get reawakened when you get to a certain age. There's a lot of distractions in the world now for people.
Yeah, there's a video on the channel of Maya Angelou, One-on-One, where she talks a little bit about that, where she says that she paraphrasing, she says that we were sold a bill of goods, that somehow we were tricked into thinking that things were equal and fair, and that our parents sent us off to the wrong schools to be educated by the oppressor, and felt that that by not telling or sharing the pain that they had to go through, that somehow we were protected, and in the process we lost a step. So
we should have had what was tantamount to Hebrew schools for that. A lot of my Jewish friends that I grew up with in junior high and grade school would have to go to Hebrew school to learn about their heritage and to make sure they never forget. There's something to be admired about that. Never forget, and don't give a shit about what anybody else says.
Facts.
We complain about it, in terms of the relationships between the Black and Jewish communities, but you got to admire people who said, you know what? The world stood by while this was happening to our people for a time being. Never again, motherfuckers. We're going to own everything. We're going to do whatever we have to do. Never again. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I just want to entertain some of the chat. I was just going to pop some things up, and if Charles wants to speak, but the next part, I'll entertain the chat, questions in the chat, comments in the chat. We'll address them. Then we'll take a small break to show the Spook Who Sat by the Door clip. But Charles, what were you about to say, sir?
No, I was just going to say that I agree with a lot of what you said, Eric. And in studying and putting the pieces together for the projects I'm on, I observe words. That's also a part of the Willie Lynch letter. You know, he talks about the language. You see, the more you learn your oppressor's language, the more dangerous you become as a member of the oppressed. And one thing that has to be understood, power respects power. See, if racist white power can enslave you, the only thing that's going to free you is black power. When you look at these countries and they're talking about having a weapon, a super weapon, one of the things they always say to give them a justification for arming themselves is what? They're saying, if I have the weapons, then I will make it plain that I'm not to be messed with. See, because if you have a super weapon, isn't it odd you want to tell somebody else they can't have one?
Yeah, that's always been an interesting American imperialist kind of perspective, right? You know, I mean, you know, you got the United States and Russia beefing, but you know, you want to tell people what they can and can't have, you know. And like I said, we're not talking about America now in terms of our policies around the world. We're not the best sometimes. You know, there's been it's historically documented that we've been a little shady, we've been a little grimy, you know, in dealing with people. So, you know, certain countries might be pissed off about us and say America is this, America is that. And I'm sure those all of us, you know, chat people, trolls included, all of us that might come across this video, sure none of us had nothing to do with some of those policies that got us kind of the bad reputation in some places around the world. But sometimes we got to look at it and say, hey, there's a reason why people, you know, respect gets respect, right? You get respect when you give respect. And Ronald Reagan was what? He was the one who talked about mutual deterrence or whatever. You know, Russia, you got your bomb, we got our bomb. So we both got enough bombs to blow up the world where nobody wins. So that's that theory that you're talking about, right, Charles, that America and Russia has always operated on, mutual destruction. You know, what was the movie with Henry Fonda back in the day? The black and white one, Chuck, where his wife, he played the president.
Yeah.
Was it Fail Safe? Was the name of it?
I think that was, I feel. I don't remember Henry Fonda being in it, but I believe that's it.
Yeah, he played the president, and what had happened was an American fighter pilot mistakenly got a message to, you know, that the World War III had started. And this message was supposed to be, you know, it had to be double checked, and double checked. And once you get that message, they get the message to drop the bomb. Allegedly, no one can tell them, you know, hey, you know, you go through with the mission, because whoever contacts you after this is going to try to deceive you. So it was a mistake that this guy, this American fighter pilot, got the message to drop the bomb. He dropped the bomb somewhere in Russia. So what they had to do was pick a city where Russia had to take out a city too in America in this movie Fail Safe. And Henry Fonda was the president of the United States, and they were trying to talk to the fighter pilot before he went and dropped it, and he did, and it dealt with the aftermath. But it was in the 60s, I think. And it kind of dealt with that whole kind of mutual destruction, you know, when the A-bomb was developed by, you know, I think it was around the Cuban Missile Crisis that this movie might have come out. But if guys Google it, I believe
it's Fail Safe or 7 Days in May, one of the two.
Yeah, so. Right quick, and I know Mike wanted to get something in, but I just wanted to say, when we were working on this project, Eric, one of the subtitles to it, and the project I'm talking about is From Slavery to Freedom, a reel-to-reel perspective. But I told them what this would expose is hypocrisy, democracy. And when it comes to emancipation, it's emancipation, procrastination, as so far as we're concerned. And when you look at how we're controlled, in Marxism, Marx talks about the false consciousness, getting back to what Trump was. See, Trump didn't start this.
No.
Trump, he saw what was going on. The people who propped him up, they saw what was going on. There was this malaise, this dissatisfaction with the way things were going. A lot of white folks felt that their needs were not being addressed. Not just white folks, but the people in general across the nation just felt that the politicians were not serving everyone's needs. And the people who felt most under attack was white people. So when Trump came along and he gave that spiel to the blacks, what have the Democrats done for you? We got to get rid of these old politicians. It resonated because people say, yeah, we need a change. So Trump runs against Hillary. Hillary comes out as old school, same old, same old.
But that resonates. Let me just jump in. That resonates because of the lack of knowledge, right? The lack of information that we're talking about, right? That I was talking about earlier.
It goes to the point you're making, and all that is civics. See, one thing they don't teach in school anymore, that's civics. You see, we get the government we deserve.
Yes, sir.
Okay? So if you want to play politics, because I get upset with a number of people who want to talk about the Democrats is no different than the Republicans. Okay, you want to have that argument? We can have that argument.
Sure.
Okay? When black folk were Republicans, it was because of Lincoln,
right,
and what he wanted to do for the blacks. But a lot of people don't know about Lincoln. Didn't give a damn about the blacks.
Right.
He was concerned about preserving the Union.
Right.
All right.
But he was the lesser of the evils, right? At least he was.
Here's the thing: pushing Lincoln, two badass white boys you don't hear about. Have you heard of Charles Sumner?
Vaguely, Charles Sumner. I've heard of him vaguely, but go ahead, elaborate. You go ahead.
But the mean man, the man they didn't want saying anything, the man who really was out for black liberation and black justice and black freedom was Thaddeus Stevens.
Thaddeus Stevens.
Okay.
Court judge, right? Was he?
Now, if you see Spielberg's Lincoln, and you see Tommy Lee Jones played Thaddeus Stevens. Mm-hmm. But if you saw The Birth of a Nation, the character with the clubfoot, that was based on Thaddeus Stevens. Okay. But here's what's interesting. When John Brown wanted to fight for black folk, how did they label him?
Abolitionist? Or didn't they label him kind of crazy?
As crazy and a madman.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
When Nat Turner did what he did, and William Steinman and the guy who interviewed him, how was Nat Turner labeled?
As a savage, I believe.
Savage, crazy man, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when Patrick Henry and Thomas Payne and all these sons of liberty, when they want
Patriot
to fight for liberty against King George the Third, or is it the third? When they said, give me liberty or give me death, they were not labeled as madmen.
That's right.
Okay. See, they can have their remember the Alamo. But when it comes to blacks, you got to wait for someone to give you what they denied you in the first place.
Right. And then if you go take it, then you're wrong. You know, hey, get into a little bit, just for people who don't know, the history of who Thaddeus Stevens was, if you will, Charles, because I'm not quite sure. I'm slightly familiar. But if you could just describe for folks who both of those gentlemen are.
Thaddeus Stevens and Charles Sumner, among others, they were looked at as the radical Republicans. Thaddeus Stevens is the one who wanted the 13th Amendment passed. Okay, see, the Emancipation Proclamation, that was BS. That was an executive order that Lincoln passed to free the slaves in the seceding states.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but all of the rights that Thaddeus Stevens and Charles Sumner wanted to put in legislation, they fought against that tooth and nail. And Thaddeus Stevens, there was nothing that he was going to accept but total freedom for blacks.
Mm.
Okay. And here's what a lot of people don't realize. When Lincoln was running for presidency, one of the things he had to compromise on to get him elected, Lincoln was the first Republican president we had. Do you know who his vice president was?
That's when he had to. Was it Jackson? Who was it?
His vice president was a Democrat, Andrew
Right.
Johnson.
Right. To flip the whole shit when he became president. Right. Yeah.
Tennessee Johnson. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the first president that they attempted to do what to him?
They tried to do.
Impeach him.
Right. Right. But he got
he
became president because it was a combination of what was it? What was Lincoln's concept when he invited him to be vice president? Right. Rivals, something of rivals coming together, something like that, right?
Well, the whole thing is, yeah, they brought him on, but who, the thing is, when Lincoln was running, they used to call Lincoln an ape. And the thing that triggered the secession by South Carolina was the first state to secede from the Union.
Mm.
Lincoln's winning the election, that was it. Now, the thing that got things started was John Brown's attempt to get the weapons at Harper's Ferry. See, ain't nobody going to take something from you because it's just something to do. They're going to take something from you because they don't want you to have it.
Right.
Black folk ain't never been regarded as human beings in this country. And as I told you, one of the things I like to look at is I like to decode words, Brother Payne. And I look at the word world. 80% of world is word.
Hmm.
And the word controls our world. When Trump gets in there, fake news, that's all a propagandistic strategy.
Sure.
It's words. They say words what?
Matter.
Words matter. See? In that language, we have a message being conveyed, right? Now look at the word message.
Mm-hmm.
When they put that word out, when they deliver that message, it's designed, it's purposed to create for the targeted other, the victim, the marginalized Black and other non-whites. Message now becomes mess age.
Mm.
Becomes a mess age for the targeted victims.
Mm.
It's heavy, brother.
River City. We met Deshaun Bennett in.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I put the wrong thing. So let's take a little break and 2 minutes to look at this this piece that Charles found from his deep knowledge and archive that is a precursor to Juneteenth. I mean, do you want to set up the clip at all, Charles, or just let it play?
No, it's nothing I found. It's just something I remembered, a scene that stuck out in my mind. And I said, Mike, this would be apropos for our discussion tonight.
Okay. All right. So we'll start. I'll take you guys away for a second. And here we go. Just this is Ivan Dixon from the Spook Who... Ivan Dixon's The Spook Who Sat by the Door, Sam Greenlee, based on Sam Greenlee's novel, a scene from that film. Take a look.
What we got now is a colony. But what we want to create is a new nation. In order to do that, we got to pay a different kind of dues. Freedom dues.
Right on.
According to Mr. Charlie, we have never paid any dues. You dig those plantation movies on television?
Yeah.
No chains, no whips.
Yeah.
Bunch of happy darkies just waiting on Master Charlie and his family and digging it.
Like it's fun. Like it's fun.
Lordy, Lordy, Lordy. It's Colonel Beauregard come home from the war.
My faithful retainer, George. The war is over, and we lost. You're not a slave anymore, George. You're free.
Free, Master? Is that bad, Master? I gonna die?
You're free, George. You can leave the plantation.
I wanna stay with you.
But I can't pay you, George. The carpetbaggers mortgaged the plantation.
Oh, don't let that worry you none. Well, I wouldn't know what to do with no money. And don't let that mortuary thing worry you either. Everything's gonna be all right.
Bless you, George. George. Sit down, George.
Master, Master.
You have just played out the American dream.
Yeah.
And now we're going to turn it into a nightmare.
Oops. Okay. Deep stuff.
You remember that, Eric?
You muted.
Yeah, I do. I remember it. You know, that brother hasn't, he didn't, I don't know if it was Backlash, but that brother who played the lead, you know, he never.
Lawrence Cook.
Yeah, Lawrence Cook. I don't know, maybe it's just the acting industry, but I remember he hasn't been in a lot of movies. I don't know if there was a backlash on him for being in that movie, but I didn't see him in a lot of movies after that. And I remember when that movie came out, wanting to see it. I was a teenager, and it was only in the movies for like about a week. You're right? A couple of days, and then it was taken out.
Yeah.
Lawrence Cook, to your point that you're raising, Eric, he died destitute.
Mm.
It may have had to have people help get him in the ground.
Mm.
And I had the opportunity to speak to Ivan Dixon, who directed that. And, you know, Ivan Dixon directed Trouble Man.
Right.
But Mike had a long interview with him that's on the channel.
With Ivan
But
Dixon?
Ivan Dixon
That's fantastic.
Mhm.
It kind of left
Ivan
this
Dixon was very angry at the system.
right. I watched what's the movie that he did with Abby Lincoln, Mike? That I think you posted it on the channel,
Nothing
right?
but a man.
Not a man.
Nothing But a Man.
No, he screened it, but it is on YouTube. Nothing but a man.
Right. You know, and Lawrence Cook was also in Colors. That was the next time I saw him as an actor, and it wasn't a big role, but yeah, he was in the movie Colors there about the gangs in Los Angeles. It's interesting.
He had a little small, you know, being in the profession, Eric, you know this, you know, a lot of times you're making some monies being an extra in some things, you know. But he was in Cotton Comes to Harlem also.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's right. He played one of the henchmen for Calvin Lockhart. Yeah. Cotton Comes to Harlem. Class. You know, those are the movies of my youth, bro. Those are all, I could watch them all day, every day. Just the whole movies that were depicted in the 70s. I know we're getting kind of off track, but, you know, that was such a depiction of Black cultural life back then for what it was. At times it was a little bit stereotypical, and at times it wasn't. But, you know, when I think about the image of life in the 70s, a lot of those movies really depicted it and capture our culture.
Night.
What's interesting is this, as you pointed out, he didn't get to work much, but Ivan Dixon, I'm quite sure he caught hell having directed this piece
Absolutely.
and doing it in a way where it's one of the few films that goes against the grain of what I label films that come out where you always have this attempt at creating art that in the long run, the conclusion is that we're all brothers, racial tolerance, that's a must. And if we don't have films promoting that message, then they're going to catch hell. And Spook Who Sat by the Door is a classic example of that. It was promoting a revolutionary sense, where number one, as Malcolm X said, if you're not a part of the solution, then you're a part of the problem.
Right.
And also, when we talk about the 1619 project, 1620, the Pilgrims came here and they landed on Plymouth Rock. But as Malcolm X once again said, we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us.
Mm-hmm.
So the information is that, once again, they don't want us to know the truth. And the truth is another word. When you look at it, they tell you the truth what?
Hurts.
Set you free, bro.
The truth hurts. Now try spelling truth without hurt in it.
Oh God, Charles did his mic drop. I love when he does that. Okay. So where I was gonna before we move on, they are talking about remaking The Spook Who Sat by the Door. Lee Daniels is doing it as a TV series. Do you think we need it? Do you think it can be effective as in mainstream media? The Spook Who Sat by the Door, there'll be some compromises that will take the teeth out of it.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, I was just Charles speaking. I was just thinking that at the time that the movie was made, and they actually got the money to make that movie, what was happening? Like, there were a lot of black exploitation movies that were out that were presenting a certain image of black people, what America was going through historically and culturally at the time. So if you really think about it, this movie was really, really radical and taking a chance of making it. I mean, maybe more so than Sweetback, right? Because it's talking about direct revolution against a system that's oppressive in the time period of the larger historical time period of what was really happening, where that shit was really going on. Where the Panthers, I mean, when is the Spook Who Sat by the Door comes out, what, 6 maybe?
73.
73.
Even better. I mean, what Dr. King we had the assassinations of the late 60s of the Panthers. So yeah, that movie coming out in 73 is really, which is, you had a couple of studios obviously that were doing that, putting out projects like that were really addressing the issues of the day and pushing the edge, because that was really pushing the edge. So either it was going to be welcomed by everybody, or everybody was going to be banished. That was involved in that shit. Well, if you're black and involved in it, you probably were going to get, more extreme banished than maybe some of the white folks that were in it. I mean, Robert Downey Sr., did he catch hell for doing Putney Swope? A little bit, it looks like, right?
Yeah.
The thing, Eric and Mike, and we discussed this in a mini lesson we did, but it's my opinion that blaxploitation, the reason it could have a Spook Who Sat by the Door is that the message they felt was going to be marginalized. It was film that was aimed at a black audience.
Mm-hmm.
See, that kind of film would not be made for mainstream cinema.
Right.
But when you analyze the bulk of the product of what blaxploitation films were about, the anger, the retribution, the revenge that was allowed by blacks for the first time on screen against whites, it was a certain kind of white. It wasn't a power structure white. It was a white gangster.
In those movies, blaxploitation, yeah.
See, so and then ultimately what happened is that blaxploitation served a purpose for the system because the anger that was pent up with blacks, because that whole militancy era that became known as the Black Power era, that anger, that's wanting to lash out against the system, that catharsis was allowable in these films. I called it rioting in the movie theater because remember, we had a lot of riots where a lot of cities were torn up, tore up from the floor up.
Yep.
Okay. This gave you that release, that expurgated opportunity to feel good. So that was the release at the end of the film, the conclusion. When you left,
And because it was a bad guy, it was all right. The dominant main power structure, the American white power structure, really didn't have that much of a problem with it because the white guys that were getting the comeuppance were criminals. So in that environment, yeah, the criminal, that's how the black person did their retribution.
Here's what's interesting. Spook, who sat by the door, I maintain, scared the hell out of these suckers. And then all of a sudden you saw an end to blaxploitation.
Yeah.
Another film, there was two other films where part of the theme was that it wasn't just these Italian criminal types like in Shaft, where the main leader was a power structure guy, and they caught hell. You don't hear much about Gordon's War, do you?
Gordon's War. I never saw Gordon's War. Who's that? Paul Winfield?
Yes. And Ozzie Davis directed that. But
and Melinda.
Gordon's War, remember they had a thing where they showed that the drugs out there was controlled by the people in power.
Right.
Superfly, remember what he told the mayor?
Yeah,
I know you running this game. Yeah. And if anything happened to the one pretty hair on my head, your whole family gonna be wiped out.
Right.
They came down hard on Superfly and said it was just a film that glamorized drugs. See, people have to be aware that the people who run this system, because a lot of times, you can give like a sound like it's a blanket statement where you just indicting all white folks or someone is not,
or indicting the whole system of people that want to make films and things like that. Yeah, I was just thinking the same exact thing.
So the thing is, because a lot of times people say, well, you say they, what do you mean by they? We're talking about the power structure, the people who are in charge. Oligarchy is about government by a select few. That's what we're experiencing right now. Okay. And I have what I call my power matrix. POWER. P for politics, O for occupation, oligarchic occupation, W is for wealth, E is for economics, and R is for rhetoric. When you control these things, you maintain power. I call it my 5 Ps.
Go home again. Just so we have it on the
P for what?
Right? You with me?
P.
Yeah, power, politics. O, oligarchic occupation. W, wealth. E, economics. R, rhetoric.
Go ahead.
And when you break it down to what I call the 5 Ps, politics, occupation is position, wealth is the purse, E, economics is the production, and R, rhetoric, is the press. When you control these things, you stay in power.
Deep. All right. So how do you explain ice cream for Juneteenth?
He just did.
Well, chocolate ice cream, I can understand.
Oh, this was a delicious red velvet confection ice cream sold by Walmart in honor of Juneteenth, and right away people said it put a bad taste in their mouth. But I mean, the fact that they trademarked it and they got away with it is surprising in itself. I mean, to me, it shows that there aren't very many people of color, Black folks, working over at Walmart in positions of POWER.
But what if they're donating a percentage of their proceeds? Just throwing this out here now to consider. What if Walmart is saying, hey, and on that packaging it says, and a portion of the proceeds will be donated to the UNCF? Is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing?
Good question.
You know, I mean, in an economically run primarily world, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Just like also looking at that next to that flyer for whoever's party with MLK wearing that. Now, you know, those type of flyers, probably those are brothers in the hood giving that were probably the promoters of that event, and they chose to put MLK with the crown. And is that a good thing? I mean, it's sacred. He's a sacred image or person in the course of our history, American history. But is it a bad thing or a good thing that the brothers now is like, yo, we making MLK, you know, we modernizing him. We know who he is. You know, he's a king, you know.
Well,
Just,
I mean, continue. So these are the tasteful flyers for Juneteenth.
Y'all ever see that video where some cats put Obama in the at the end of the video? Some rappers, and they had him like, you know, peeling off the dollars and what. And there's a number of music videos where brothers would superimpose Obama's face, or you know, on YouTube with people getting owned or falling, and they have making a face. And the shit is funny, but that's crazy because you know. Not really mad at that. He's got headphones on, but with the money in his hand, man, y'all going too far. Who made them up? No Black people made them.
It's over in Flint last year.
They got him
earlier this year.
Young right there, over there. What's that in Flint? Y'all got MLK looking like he's ready to get down. Look kind of buff. You know that Photoshop was looking almost a little natural.
Guaranteed sell out.
No man, no. Who did that?
It's a little painful. The oppression is killing me.
Charles said it. The lack of knowledge. The lack of knowledge. Sometimes, you know, you'll do something, but you know, maybe.
So
maybe they thought they was doing their part by buying it.
So the question is, where do we draw the line with this? I mean, do we at this point it's a federal holiday, but as Black people, anything Black related that's endorsed by the man, we take ownership of, we take pride of, you know. So where do we draw the line? Is it an ice cream? Is it a t-shirts? Is it at pool parties? How should we celebrate this new holiday?
I don't know. How have we been celebrating the King holiday?
Well, it's supposed to be a day of service.
That's a little indicative of how we're going to do this one, right? I mean, to a certain degree, you could say the same discussion has been said about that holiday, right, Charles?
Well, you know, I think the biggest celebration for a lot of these days when they become holidays is that, you know, you got a day off, a paid day off.
There it is.
You know?
You should use that paid day off for something productive.
And what happens is what should be celebratory is the history and the knowledge about what Martin Luther King was about, what Memorial Day represents, what this day was all about, you know, and to pursue that knowledge, because eventually that knowledge will help you to continue to free your mind. Because if your mind, as my man Dr. Ben said, you know, if your mind is still shackled and enslaved, you'll never become free. As we say, there's a difference between freedom, FREEDOM, and freedom, FREEDUMB.
I'll read some of these comments. I agree with what Alicia said.
Let's go through the comments real fast before we wind it up.
Celebrate with education, storytelling, yeah. And even
I'm not seeing the chat come up, Mike.
You don't see the chat?
No.
Open where
Are
it
you
says
seeing
comments.
it, Eric?
Where it says comments, click it.
You gotta go to comments. You're probably in the private.
You know what? Stupid me. I got it under private chat.
Okay.
Yeah. That's how it comes up actually. Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, I'm trying to go back to the beginning. So we can, as we wrap up, let's address some of the comments. This one came in before the stream happened. Bro, this is needed. I wish y'all had a bigger platform. I was seeing this on the news and they act like it's fine with the ice cream, profit from the struggle, but want no parts of the struggle. Welcome to America.
Cultural appropriation, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And a lot of people don't know, and I hope I'm not boring you guys with the breakdown of words, but America is an anagram for I am race.
You get scientifics right now, bro. You uptown in New York. You uptown.
Well, New York is about the dollar. I mean, I saw that on 125th Street. Everything was yesterday.
WPAI, I feel you, brother. And listen, when my mom was doing LIB, and just in the New York City area, there's a lot of wealth of information that we have access to. A lot of thinkers and scholars, and some less known than others, some just known locally. But what I always appreciated about that was that being able to go uptown or go here or go there to just hear discussions, and I was aware of a lot more of them, obviously, through the network of WLIB BLS. But it was, if now through YouTube we can do that. You guys can get down and watch Dr. Ben do a lecture or Dr. Clark. My regular TV viewing, I'm watching TV. I'm putting on YouTube. I'm watching Dr. Clark do his lectures and Dr. Ben. And that's what I appreciate. That's how start, like I always say, Mike, started getting reconnected with you, watching your channel.
Yeah.
The education and information and the discussion, the level of discussion that we can have, those of us that want to have a discussion about it,
Yeah, I mean, well, so what do you guys?
Like someone just made a comment, someone just made a comment about freedom. Freedom is a constant struggle.
Yeah.
I mean, so the argument is that all holidays are commercialized, down from Halloween, Valentine's Day, Christmas. I mean, but
cookouts, they become cookouts.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you want them to be known about, I think you have to commercialize them to a certain extent, don't you? I mean, but that's the whole balance, right? What's in good taste, what's in bad taste, and depending on the holiday you're celebrating, the level of frivolity. Halloween, you could be wild in Halloween because it's not considered a sacred holiday. But if you talk about some religious holidays or some important holidays like Juneteenth is to us, or other holidays, or why Italian people get upset when people are talking about the truth about Christopher Columbus, those of them that didn't really know the truth. There's it's the balance of how you're going to celebrate it, right?
Yeah, everything has a dichotomous nature. Like I mentioned earlier, Charles Blow in his article, he's saying, on the one hand, yes, it can be commercialized, but on the other hand, it's a reminder that this is something to remind us of one of the tragedies of this country, what Blacks had to go through. And when you decide to go beyond just June 19th, 1865,
right,
and what preceded it and what followed it,
right,
and dig into it and see how many of our people were tortured, tormented, had to go through the wretched ordeal of what America, this hypocrisy, democracy, what it put our people through and what it continues to want us to endure. This is the only thing, as you said, there are people who they have their constant holiday, their constant vigil, their constant attempt to never forget. Well, we have to be of the same mind. Never forget. Never forget.
When you know the history, and you know, not to say walk around with a chip on your shoulder, but I'm just fortunately I had parents who, you know, blessed to have both my parents in the home. Both of them were educated. Both of them were active in, you know, Black and the movement and things like that. And also me, the entertainer side or the artist side causes me to have an interest in history also, you know, on top of all the type of way I was raised. So if you know history, you know, and I grew up, man, you know, watching the old civil rights, that traditional black and white film that was put out during the civil rights movement with the water hose, fire hose, and the kids getting the fire hose and the dogs down there with Bull Connor. That's seared into my memory from childhood. Seeing those on TV, growing up during the time that was happening, being a young child. So I remember the history. You know, when they were talking about Obama being elected in post-racial America, no, I remember the history. I remember those images seared in my mind, you know, thinking, identifying with that one final shot. Spike uses it in the beginning of school days of the little boy had his hands balled up in a fist because I was around that age that time seeing. I remember that. So if you know the history of things, that's why, you know, people hold on to their culture and their history because there's something, it's worth something, you know, paid for with blood and sweat and tears. That's real shit, y'all. I mean, you know.
Eric, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Getting piggybacking on what Eric just stated.
Mm-hmm.
We go back 1865, the war is over. Lincoln has his first meeting with black leaders. Do you guys know what he told them?
I recently saw
Frederick Douglass, or
he told them, you guys have to get it in your heads that you need to go back to Africa.
Right, he wanted them out, yeah.
He said, because I don't think blacks and whites can ever work together in America.
Which kind of gives credence to the thought that some people said that we were never meant to have rights. We're always meant to be slaves here in this country. But also to the fact that I say to that, and a lot of other people say that, you know, all the slaves that built this country, you know, it's you know, there's no going back. Your people built this shit. I ain't going nowhere. You feel me? My people
Eric,
built it. I'm going to lay claim to what's mine. You know?
Eric, you say you stay tuned on TV?
I'm sorry?
You say you watch a lot of TV, right? The information, the news and whatnot.
Yeah.
You see what's happening in Texas?
Yeah.
And the reason why I bring up Texas is because Juneteenth, it was in Galveston, Texas, when these slaves were made aware that they were free.
General Order number 3.
General Order number 3, Union General Granger. But here's the thing. Texas right now, talking about seceding again. They want their own sovereignty.
Yeah.
They don't want to be a part of America.
Yeah.
Okay. And you know, all these people who didn't vote for Hillary, well, I hope you think Trump did you a big favor. Just ask the women now with Roe versus Wade, because Trump put 3 people in the Supreme Court.
Well, 2 that were stolen from the previous president, you know.
Well, it was one.
One.
There was
But,
one was
but
stolen.
yeah, one. But the thing is, what Mitch McConnell used to deprive Obama of his choice, he didn't use that excuse not to put Coney Barrett on. Because no sooner Ruth Bader Ginsburg was dead, she wasn't even cold in the grave.
Right.
and it wasn't that much time for the next election. But all the arguments he used against Obama having a choice, it didn't come up when he wanted to put someone in there while Trump is in office.
Yeah, of course, that wasn't going to happen. That was whole the plan, hold out for the next Republican president. You know.
Yeah. You know what I hope people check out, Charles, is our interview with Ellie Mistal. You know,
Yes.
in terms of this, it's got so few views.
Yeah, I'd like to check that out too, man.
It's gotten me a little disappointed because the guy is a firebrand, and he reaches a lot of people in social media and on television. And we did a great hour with him, and you know, it's still undercover. So Ellie Mistal.
Yeah, he's a good.
I love his energy.
Yeah,
and he see, you know what Ellie reminds me of, Mike and Eric. Eric was talking about in Harlem the days you can go and listen to Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Ben, Ivan Van Sertima. I was under these guys. I had some issues with most of them, except I favored Van Sertima the most. And Van Sertima caught hell from these other two because he was married to a white woman. But the thing is, what inspired me, Eric, Mike, that these guys, you just couldn't run the okie doke on them because they were so well read, so versed, and that knowledge made them strong.
Yeah.
And so, getting to your point, Mike, how
Dr.
things. I'm sorry, Eric.
I just had to throw out Dr. Collard's name in there when you're talking about a brilliant individual, a brilliant mind. When you hear him speak and debate and cite facts, Dr. Khalid Muhammad, you know, rest in peace. You know,
well,
someone who was a brilliant soldier.
Yeah, but the thing is, there's so much that we need to get in our heads, and people spending all their time worrying about who the Kardashians are screwing and all this kind of stuff, all this BS. And it's just, like I tell you, what keeps me going, what makes my day, you know, Duke Ellington, he said music is his mistress. Well, reading books. Today is my wife's birthday. She's my main squeeze. But my other main squeeze is I grab a book, get into it, keeping this fresh as much as possible. That frees me.
Education is liberation. So, Charles, I take it like in terms of how should we celebrate Juneteenth, it should be with education.
You know, a lot of people want to dismiss the importance of education, but for me, it's always about education. But the thing about education, you have to be clear about what education truly is. You see, to maintain any power structure, the power structure is not going to educate you in the sense that they're not going to teach you how to think. They're going to teach you what to think.
Right. That's true.
And Eric, just final thoughts. I mean, how do you feel Juneteenth should be celebrated? Where do we draw the line?
Well, you know, I didn't discover Juneteenth really until I was living in Los Angeles. The 17 years I lived on the West Coast, and I discovered it as well as Tulsa, Oklahoma, actually, because watching PBS out there in that part of the country, and it was kind of the local area PBS, right? And which would run these documentaries, I guess, dealing with the western part of the country, or just local programming in that part of the country. So that's how I first discovered the information about Tulsa, Oklahoma, and Juneteenth. And I think the more that, obviously, over the last years, these last 20 some odd years, you know, the internet blew up, information, more people learned about Juneteenth, Tulsa, Oklahoma. You know, just like we might know Seneca Village here in New York, what happened there. So for that reason, you know, celebrating the historical significance of it, obviously, you know, blacks, slaves in this part of the country were already free. And so I guess the thing was, a lot of people, I was discussing this with my dad the other day, a lot of people weren't really celebrating, Black people here weren't really celebrating Juneteenth. A, I think because like me, they didn't know about it, and B, because the slaves were already free here. So those slaves in Texas got free then. But I'm going with the concept, none of us are free until all of us are free. So that's why we should celebrate it. And that's what we should think about, that all of us weren't free.
Mm.
And you know, we have that bond with each other, whether like it or not. The various tribes that were thrown on into those ships from the various parts of Africa. Now, you know, you might have been a different tribe in Africa, but you know, I think with John Lewis said we were all in the same boat when he once really described everybody coming over in different ships. We're all in the same boat now in America, so we got to find a way. But certainly, us that happen to be descendants of Africans and from the continent of Africa need to find a way to unify so we can, you know, live like everybody else, live free, self-determination.
Mm.
That's what America is. It promises this, so everybody should have an opportunity for that. You know, I'm not going on Black Power because we haven't had that. That's why I think we're all Black Power, because we haven't had those rights. Not anti-white. It's just, you know, let's all do it. If it's going to be United fucking States, talk about you the man and you the fucking country where everything is good, live up to that. Right?
Yeah, that's the hypocrisy democracy.
Yes, sir.
You know, you say something on paper, but you practice something entirely different, something that's antithetical what you've written. And that's been their curse, their boogaboo. But like Martin Luther King said, you know, a lot of people think you can enslave and marginalize certain people and it's not going to impact you. No, what affects me affects you. Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
The fire next time, we had a civil war over differences. People, they tell you, if you fail to study history, you're going to be doomed to repeat it.
That's right.
A lot of people think this is a joke. These people who don't want us here, I'm not just talking about Black folk, I'm talking about people who are of color. A lot of people don't like to use that term, but it's, hey, don't get me started because I read the history, okay? And if Black folks think they're going to achieve liberation and freedom just by themselves, look what happened to the Native Americans, okay? Thanksgiving is something we celebrate. Many people don't know how the people who taught these Europeans how to live and survive on this land, eventually they were exterminated. They made an attempt constantly to try to exterminate Black folk.
Yeah.
Okay. But there are a whole lot of folk that made it possible for us to enjoy some freedom. 1688, the Quaker petition. White Quakers' religion were against slavery. Baba Dick could tell you what John Brown was all about. I just mentioned Thaddeus Stevens and Charles Sumner. Okay, so the thing they don't want you to understand is that the thing that scares them the most is not when just Black people come together, but when people who share the same tragedy, people of all colors, just listen to Reverend Barber. It's about people who share this injustice. When they come together, that's the biggest threat to the system.
Of course. You know, I happened to see the first time Endgame, the Avengers movie. When they said at the end of the movie, when the Avengers were getting their ass whooped by the big dude Thanos and all of his army came and they all were looking the same and they were all exactly alike. And they'd look up and first Wakanda, the Black Panther, comes through the little portal and all of the Avengers, and they say Avengers assemble. But what tripped me out was all of the Avengers were different. They were a diverse group of superheroes. You had one motherfucker that was like a robot. Somebody was on fire. Somebody was, I mean, it would trip me out. I was like, wow, the Avengers, they got the whole diverse crew. They said Avengers Assemble. It's like they came from everywhere. And it kind of reminded, I mean, you know, I guess in a metaphor and an analogy or whatever the fuck, whichever way I'm supposed to put it, it kind of made me think about where we are in the world now, you know, that the Avengers, the diverse group, the united group of all these different individuals were battling against a force that was against that, and they all seemed to be the same. You know, they all were kind of monsterish looking and just wanted to wreak havoc. I don't know the rest of the story, you know, the larger story, but that kind of struck me, and it was kind of interesting thinking about what's going on in the world now, you know, with the June 6th hearings and all that. And just, I was like, wow, this is interesting. Stan Lee, of course, you know, the guy who created a black superhero or had the foresight to realize that it was possible for there to be a black superhero like that.
Yeah.
You know,
reflective of the spiritual warfare that's always happening, right?
Right.
I'm gonna drop one last word on you, Brother Eric and Mike.
Yeah, we're gonna wrap it up.
First 3 letters of unity.
U-N-I.
U-N-I-T.
It's about you and I.
U-N-I-T-Y.
When we come together, we'll survive together. If we don't hang together, we'll hang separately.
Okay. In the meantime, the stock has gone up on that ice cream because they took it out of circulation. So it's gone. Yeah, they responded quickly. Good luck finding a court.
Some people felt it was in bad taste. They were just trying to support the holiday, brother. Come on.
Well,
probably Neapolitan too. It's probably Neapolitan, chocolate, strawberry, vanilla. So they were trying to bring it all together.
You know, get the shop we're having issues with the shop right now, but as soon as it's back up for Juneteenth or July 10th, get yourself some Reelblack merch.
And Miss Foxworth, thanks. I'm gonna tell my wife you sent her a happy birthday wish.
Oh, you got a lot of love here. Yeah, and happy birthday.
Bless everyone.
All right, happy birthday, Mrs. Woods. And yeah, thank you, gentlemen, for being a part of the night. I think we had a great discussion and we held our audience. So I'll be back in the morning. It's gonna be Temptations Tuesday. So it's not just Temptations, but Eddie Kendricks and Paul Williams and David Ruffin, all your favorite Temptations stuff tomorrow, 9 a.m. So all right. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Charles.
Eric, let me just say one thing, my brother. You got the kind of pain I can take.
There you go with the words.
Okay. All right. Good night, everybody. Peace and blessings.
Peace and blessings.
Everybody.